Okay, so today we are going to be learning about LCD, which stands for the least common denominator, and we're also going to be comparing fractions. So we're going to be able to tell which fraction is larger than another that have different denominators. So what I want you guys to do is open your notebook up to the next available page, and I want you to title that page LCD and comparing fractions. Once you title that page, I want you to also add that to your table of contents. Remember to be keeping that up to date, and then we'll get started. So go ahead and pause this video, let all the students title their page and add it to their table of contents, and then restart the video so we can start taking our notes. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next slide, which is our one definition that we're going to write down in our notebooks. And this definition is the least common denominator, or the LCD. And the least common denominator is the LCM, or the least common multiple, of the denominators in different fractions. So if we want to find the least common denominator, we would look at our 2 or 3 fractions, look at those denominators, and find the least common multiple of those numbers. So we're going to use the same process that we've been using to find the least common multiple of numbers, except this time we're going to use it to find a common denominator. So go ahead and pause this video, have students copy down this definition in their notebook, and then I'm going to go ahead and highlight my definition there, the least common denominator. So pause this video and wait for everybody to get that written down, and then we can go ahead and get started. So what we are going to start with is finding the least common denominator of a couple different fractions. So we're going to start off with 2 fractions and find the least common denominator, and then end with 3 fractions. So what I want you guys to do is underneath that definition you just wrote down, make the title, or write this title, least common denominator, kind of like a subheading, underline it, and then we're going to start finding the least common denominator. So our first 2 fractions that we're going to work with are 1/6 and 3/8. So we're going to look at these denominators and find the least common multiple of those 2 numbers. So I'm going to use the ladder method. So write down 1/6 and 3/8. You can number it number 1 if you want. And over to the side, right next to it, I'm going to set up my ladder. And I'm going to first think, okay, what goes into both 6 and 8? 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Nothing can go into 3 and 4 besides 1, so I have 3 and 4. And then to find the least common multiple, I look at these outside numbers, and I'm going to multiply them all. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. So the least common multiple is 24, which means the least common denominator for these 2 fractions is also going to be 24. So next to that, you're kind of going horizontally across the page. We're going to actually rewrite these fractions with that least common denominator. So now we know the least common denominator is going to be 24. So I'm going to go back to the original 2 numbers, or 2 fractions, and then 6, oops, it's not showing up. So 6, how do we get from 6 to 24? We're going to multiply by 4. So we do the same thing to our numerator. So 1/6 is the same as 4 over 24. And then 8 times 3 gives you 24. So we're going to multiply our numerator by 3 as well and get 9/24. So if we are rewriting our original fraction with the least common denominator, you first have to find the least common multiple using our ladder method that we've been practicing for the last couple days, and then figure out how did you change the denominator to this new least common denominator. Whatever you had to multiply that denominator by, you also have to multiply the original numerators by to get your new fractions. So 1/6 is also equivalent to 4/24. 3/8 is equivalent to 9/24. So we're going to try another one. I'm going to number this number 2. And these are 5/12 and 2/9. So go ahead and number this number 2, write down 5/12 and 2/9. And then what I'm going to do is pick a different color, and I'm going to set up another ladder with 12 and 9. And we're going to find the least common multiple of those 2 numbers. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause this video, have students work on finding the least common multiple of 12 and 9, and then if they feel comfortable, go ahead and start rewriting these two fractions with the least common denominator. If they're not comfortable, then I want you guys to stop once you find the LCM, and we can restart the video and walk through together how to change these fractions and rewrite them with our least common denominator. So pause this video, let students do the ladder method on 12 and 9, and then we can go ahead and get started again on this video, rewriting it with the least common denominator. So if we're looking at 12 and 9, a prime number that can go into both 12 and 9 is 3. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then nothing goes into both 4 and 3 except for 1. So we have 4 and 3. And then again, to find that least common multiple, we take these outside numbers and we multiply. So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. So the least common multiple here is 36. And then again, horizontally across the page, we're going to rewrite these fractions with that least common denominator, which we just found was 36. So if we go back to our original two fractions, 12 times 3 gives us 36. So 5 times 3 is 15. So that's our new numerator. And then 9 times 4 is 36. So 2 times 4 is 8. So our fractions written with the least common denominator are 15 36ths and 8 36ths. And then our last problem like this is going to be actually with 3 fractions. So this is question number 3, or practice problem number 3. So go ahead and write those 3 fractions down. And what we're going to do is use the ladder method like we have been using, except this time it's going to be with 3 numbers, 4, 8, and 10. And we've practiced doing this. So we're going to set up the ladder, 4, 8, and 10. So again, go ahead and pause this video, have students try this on their own, or they can ask their shoulder partner. And then once they find the least common multiple, try and rewrite these original fractions with using that least common denominator that we just found. Okay, so if you look at 4, 8, and 10, all 3 of those can be divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is, I wrote down the wrong number there. It should be 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now 2 and 4 can be divided by something. 5 cannot. So we're going to drop down our 5. And we're going to divide 2 and 4 by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now we are finished. So we're going to find our least common denominator here. 2 times 2 times 1 times 1 times 2 times 5. So we have 4 times 10, which is 40. So the least common multiple of these 3 numbers is 40. Remember, when you have 3 numbers, if 2 out of the 3, like this 2 and 4, can still be divided, we have that exception to our rule, and we drop down that odd number out. So we had to drop down our 5, but we could still divide 2 and 4. So we're going to rewrite our 3 fractions with the least common denominator of 40. Again, horizontally across the page. So 4 times 10 is 40. So we're going to do 3 times 10, which gives us 30. It's our first fraction. 8 times 5 is 40. So 5 times 5 is 25. So 25 40ths is our second fraction. 10 times 4 is 40. So 1 times 4 is 4. So we have 30 40ths, 25 40ths, and 4 40ths as our rewritten fractions with the least common denominator. So we just used our ladder method to find least common multiple, looked back at our original fractions, and then figured out what we had to multiply our denominators by to get this least common denominator, and did the same thing to our numerators to rewrite our fractions. So now that we know how to rewrite our fractions with the least common denominator, we're going to start comparing fractions. So underneath those 3 examples we just did, go ahead and write another subtitle called Comparing Fractions. If you have to go to the next page, that's fine. Feel free to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to complete these statements using the less than sign, the greater than sign, or the equal to sign. So our first problem that I want you guys to copy down is 4/5, then a blank space, and 5/6. So we're going to compare these two fractions. And in order for us to compare these, we're actually going to find the least common denominator. So we're going to use what we just learned and apply it to this situation. So we're going to find the least common denominator, or the least common multiple of 5 and 6. So next to this problem, we're going to set up our ladder method. Nothing goes into both 5 and 6 except for 1. So our LCM is actually just 30. So the least common multiple of 5 and 6 is 30. And we're going to rewrite these fractions with the denominator of 30. So 5 times 6 was 30. 4 times 6 is 24. 6 times 5 was 30. 5 times 5 is 25. So now we're comparing our numerators here. 24 is less than 25. So we can fill in that blank space a less than symbol. So our second example, 5/14 and 2/9. So we're going to look at our denominators, 14 and 9. See if there's anything that can go into both of those. And again, the only thing that can go into those two numbers is 1. So our least common multiple is 1 times 14 times 9. So 14 times 9 should be 126. So the LCM is 126. We're going to rewrite our fractions with that least common denominator. 14 times 9 gave us 126, so 5 times 9 is 45. 9 multiplied by 14 is 126. 2 times 14 is 28. Again, we're going to compare our numerators. 45 is greater than 28, so in our blank spot in between our two original fractions, we're going to put the greater than sign. And then we've got one more example. We have 2 2/5 and 24/10. So this one looks a little bit different because we've got mixed numbers. So what I want you guys to do here is take your mixed number, and I want you to use the big C method. Remember, we take our denominator, multiply it by our whole number, and add it to our numerator. So I want you to rewrite that as an improper fraction. So 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So we have 12/5. And we're going to compare 12/5 and 24/10. So what I want you guys to do is pause the video, find the least common denominator of 5 and 10, and then change both fractions to have that least common denominator so you can compare your numerators. So take a couple minutes, try this problem, and then restart the video and check your answer. So I found my least common multiple to be 10 of 5 and 10. So our 24/10 we don't have to change. We have to change our 12/5. So in order to get the denominator of 10, we have to multiply by 2. So now we're comparing 24/10 to also 24/10. So since the numerators are the exact same when we have the common denominator, we can put our equal sign in between there. So this wraps up changing fractions to have a least common denominator and then comparing fractions. So you can go ahead and end this video and get started on your work.